The semicolon. A semicolon is a punctuation mark that separates major sentence elements. A semicolon can be used between two closely related independent clauses, provided they are not already joined by a coordinating conjunction. Semicolons can also be used in place of commas to separate items in a list, particularly when the elements of that list contain commas. History. The first printed semicolon was the work of the Italian printer Aldus Manutius the Elder in 1494. Manutius established the practice of using the semicolon to separate words of opposed meaning and to allow a rapid change in direction in connecting interdependent statements. Ben Jonson was the first notable English writer to use the semicolon systematically. The modern uses of the semicolon relate either to the listing of items or to the linking of related clauses. In Unicode it is encoded at U+003B, semicolon. English. Although terminal marks mark the end of a sentence, the comma, semicolon and colon are normally sentence internal, making them secondary boundary marks. The semicolon falls between terminal marks and the comma. Its strength is equal to that of the colon. Constraints. When a semicolon marks the left boundary of a constituent, the right boundary is marked by punctuation of equal or greater strength. When two or more semicolons are used within a single construction, all constituents are at the same level, unlike commas, which can separate. For example, subordinate clauses from main clauses. Usage. Semicolons are followed by a lowercase letter, unless that letter is the first letter of a proper noun like the word I or Chicago. Modern style guides recommend no space before them and one space after. They also typically recommend placing semicolons outside ending quotation marks, although this was not always the case. For example, the first edition of the Chicago Manual of Style recommended placing the semicolon inside ending quotation marks. Applications of the semicolon in English include: between items in a series, a listing containing internal punctuation, especially parenthetic commas, where the semicolons function as serial commas. This is by far the most frequent use currently. The people present were Jamie, a man from New Zealand, John, the milkman's son, and George, a gaunt kind of man. Several fast food restaurants can be found within the following cities: London, England, Paris, France, Dublin, Ireland, Madrid, Spain. Here are three examples of familiar sequences: 1, 2, and 3, A, B, and C, first, second, and third. Between closely related independent clauses not conjoined with a coordinating conjunction, when the two clauses are balanced. Opposed to contradictory: my wife would like tea, I would prefer coffee. I went to the basketball court, I was told it was closed for cleaning. I told Kate she's running for the hills, I wonder if she knew I was joking. Either clause may include commas. This is especially common when parallel wording is omitted from the second. Ted has 2 dogs. Sam. 1. When a comma replaces a period in a quotation, or when a quotation otherwise links two independent sentences. I have no use for this, he said. You are welcome to it. Is this your book? She asked. I found it on the floor. Other languages. Arabic. In Arabic, the semicolon is called fasila manquta, which means literally a dotted comma, and is written inverted. In Arabic, the semicolon has several uses. It can be used between two phrases, in which the first phrase causes the second. Example: he played much, so his clothes became dirty. It can be used in two phrases, where the second is a reason for the first. Example: your sister did not get high marks, because she didn't study sincerely. Greek and Church Slavonic. In Greek and Church Slavonic, a semicolon indicates a question, similar to a Latin question mark, to indicate a long pause of separate sections, each with commas. Greek uses the alpha nu omega tau epsilon lambda epsilon iota alpha and interpunct. Examples: Greek mu epsilon sigma epsilon gamma chi omega rho epsilon iota tau epsilon pi omicron epsilon epsilon iota nu alpha iota omicron sigma tau alpha theta mu omicron sigma. Church Slavonic, e.e. French. In French, a semicolon is used where either a colon or a comma would be only half appropriate. The phrase following a semicolon can be either a full sentence or a phrase. However, in no case would the first next word be capitalized. Its meaning is only slightly related to the colons, if at all. The closest English equivalent would be an N or M dash. The dash character is used in French writing too, but not as widely as the semicolon. Usage of these devices varies from author to author. Encoding in digital media, scripts comprising wide characters, such as kanji, use a full-width equivalent located at Unicode code point U plus FF1B. Unicode characters are allocated for U plus 003B, semicolon, same as the EBCDIC semicolon character is 94 as 0x5E. U plus 061B Arabic semicolon, Arabic script. U plus 204F reverse semicolon, used in old writing systems, such as Hungarian runic. U plus 1364 ETHIOPIC semicolon, GEEZ script. U plus A6F6BAMUM semicolon, BAMUM script. U plus FF1B full-width semicolon, for use in wide character scripts such as kanji. U plus Fa14 presentation form for vertical semicolon, determines orientation when wide character scripts are written vertically instead of horizontally. U plus Fa54 small semicolon, small form variants for compatibility with Chinese National Standard CNS 11643. U plus 236 CAPL functional symbol semicolon UNDERBAR, used in the APL programming language. U plus 2E35 turn semicolon, indicates sudden glottal closure. U plus E003B tag semicolon, deprecated tags, block. Related characters. U plus 037E, Greek question mark. Computing usage. Programming. In computer programming, the semicolon is often used to separate multiple statements. In other languages, semicolons are called terminators and are required after every statement. Today, semicolons as terminators has largely won out, but this was a divisive issue in programming languages from the 1960s into the 1980s. An influential and frequently cited study in this debate was Gannon and Horning, which concluded strongly in favor of semicolon as a terminator. The most important was that having a semicolon as a statement terminator was better than having a semicolon as a statement separator. The study has been criticized as flawed by proponents of semicolon as a separator, due to participants being familiar with the semicolon as terminator language and unrealistically strict grammar. Nevertheless, the debate ended in favor of semicolon as terminator. Semicolons are optional in a number of languages, including BCPL, Eiffel, and Go, meaning that they are part of the formal grammar for the language, but can be inferred in many or all contexts. As languages can be designed without them, semicolons are considered an unnecessary nuisance by some. The use of semicolons in control flow structures and blocks of code is varied. Semicolons are generally omitted after a closing brace, but included for a single statement branch of a control structure, except in Pascal, where a semicolon terminates the entire if-then-else clause and thus is not allowed allowed between the then and the corresponding else, as this causes unnesting. This use originates with algal 60, and falls between the comma, used as a list separator, and a period, full stop, used to mark the end of the program. The semicolon, as a mark separating statements, corresponds to the ordinary English usage of separating independent clauses, and gives the entire program the gross syntax of a single ordinary sentence. Of these other characters, whereas commas have continued to be widely used in programming for lists, they are rarely used otherwise, and a period as the end of the program has fallen out of use. The last major use of the comma, semicolon, and period hierarchy is in Erlang, where commas separate expressions, semicolon separate clauses, both for control flow and for function clauses, and periods terminate statements, such as function definitions or module attributes, not the entire program. Drawbacks of having multiple different separators or terminators include mental overhead in selecting punctuation, and overhead in rearranging code, as this requires not only moving lines around, but also updating the punctuation. In some cases, the distinction between a separator and a terminator is strong, such as early versions of Pascal, where a final semicolon yields a syntax error. In other cases, a final semicolon is treated either as optional syntax, or as being followed by a null statement, which is either ignored or treated as an op. Compare trailing commas in lists. In some cases, a blank statement is allowed, allowing a sequence of semicolons of the use of a semicolon by itself as the body of a control flow structure. For example, a blank statement stands for an op in C, C++, which is useful in busy waiting synchronization loops. Other languages use semicolons to mark the beginning of comments. Example Seco. Conventionally, in many languages, each statement is written on a separate line, but this is not typically a requirement of the language. In the above example, two statements are placed on the same line. This is legal, because the semicolon separates the two statements. Data. The semicolon is often used to separate elements of a string of text. For example, multiple email addresses in the to field in some email clients have to be delimited by a semicolon. In Microsoft Excel, the semicolon is used as a list separator, especially in cases where the decimal separator is a comma, such as 0, 32, 3, 14, 4, 50, instead of 0.32, 3.14, 4.50. In MATLAB in GNU Octave, the semicolon can be used as a row separator when defining a vector or matrix or to execute commands silently, without displaying the resulting output value in the console. In HTML, a semicolon is used to terminate a character entity reference, either named or numeric. In some delimiter-separated values file formats, the semicolon is used as the separator character, as an alternative to comma-separated values. Other uses. The semicolon is commonly used as parts of emoticons, in order to indicate winking.